Jolly good show, Major.
The plot is thickening when it comes to the subject of performance-enhancing drugs and Peyton Manning. This is Rob English, your Socal Seahawk. Thank you for joining me on another edition of Going the Distance. And today we're going to do things a little bit different. Normally we would just go ahead and go through the Seattle Seahawks previous game, that being the Week 16 game with the St. Louis Rams. But today we're going to still go ahead and go over the game, but we're going to switch directions and talk about something that I believe is a bit more of a big fish subject. But to start, 1:25 kickoff, Seattle, Washington. The Seattle Seahawks took on the St. Louis Rams for the second time this season, and it did not work out much better than it did in Week 1. The St. Louis Rams beat us again. Another situation where we just couldn't get out of our own way, and the Rams did what they had to do to come out the victor. An ugly game. It was a complete and total just exercise in ineptitude. We saw nothing of what we've seen from the Seahawks over the last 4 or 5 weeks on Sunday. Everything, we seem to revert back to even worse, really, than we were before we went on this little tear that we've been on recently. From the very beginning, the running game was completely ineffective. The blocking on the front line is like they just weren't blocking at all. Really. Christine Michael had very little room to get anything going. And the defense was in Russell Wilson's face the entire time. Just a real poor showing on the side of our Seahawks. Field position played a big role on Sunday. We started deep in our own territory multiple times throughout the game, and punted from our own end zone, I believe once, or at least twice. At least once, and I think twice. And the special teams didn't guard the kick return very well. It was just overall just bad. Penalties also. Penalties will always kill you. Penalties have had a history of killing us. And, penalties negated great plays, good plays that we had throughout the game as well. The one big run that Christine Michael had was negated by a clipping call. Later on in the game, we had a holding call that negated a nice catch and run from Fred Jackson. Russell Wilson had a penalty of his own. He got Bryce Brown down the sideline on a little dump off as he was looking to scramble. And turns out he threw the ball too late. He had already passed the line of scrimmage. And so we lost that down and suffered a 5 or 10 yard penalty. I can't remember, but the illegal forward pass, and that play was wiped away. And then Russell Wilson on the whole, just a poor showing. I mean, he was still Russell Wilson, but he was just off today. The whole team was off. I mentioned earlier, it seemed like the team was playing like they were out in Pioneer Square the previous night, because they were just a step behind and a little bit off all game long. Russell Wilson's throws were inaccurate most of the time, especially when throwing on the run. The great thing about Russell Wilson is that when he throws the ball on the run, he is typically right on target. That's what makes him so dangerous, is that when he does have to leave the pocket, he's not just a running threat. He leaves the pocket and he can throw the ball outside of the pocket and on the run, and he's accurate. Not on Sunday. He was overthrowing and off target. A couple of guys he had, had him in stride, over or under threw him, whether they were going vertical or parallel to the line of scrimmage. putting too much air under the ball. He threw one pass to Jermaine Kearse. I believe it was in the third quarter. And he rainbowed it to him. There was nobody underneath the route to take the ball away. So I'm not sure why the ball had so much air under it, but it took forever to get to Kearse, and by the time the ball got there, Kearse took a big hit and the ball fell out. It was a wet and rainy cold day in Seattle. I suppose that had something to do with it. But everybody, again, just a step behind. The blocking. Again, the blocking was just atrocious. There was no blocking in the passing game, no blocking in the running game. Now, Russell Okung was out on Sunday, and Alvin Bailey was playing left tackle in his absence. And I don't know if that really had any or everything to do with the situation, but it definitely, regardless of whether that was the reason, the totality of the situation was that they didn't block anything. Didn't block anything. And when you have a situation like that where you have so many negative plays, I mean, so many running plays and sacks, so many running plays that were tackled behind line of scrimmage and sacks, when you have that many things like that happening, you have to take advantage of the positive plays, and the positive plays were oftentimes negated by penalties. It was a total, degradation in Seattle's gameplay. It was like they relapsed back to the Seahawks of earlier this season. The turnovers. The turnovers, I can almost stomach Russell Wilson's interception deep down the field. I don't get too upset if you throw a pick deep down the field. Typically a deep ball, especially when it's all the way down toward the goal line, if it's picked off, okay, yeah, that's unfortunate, but it's like a punt. So especially, if it's on third down and you go deep, I can stomach that. I can stomach that. But Russell Wilson fumbled the ball late in the game when he was making a play that was likely to put us in position, to be able to get back to a point where we're going to have an opportunity to win the game. Russell Wilson pulled the ball down, ran, had the opportunity to go out of bounds, and didn't. And honestly, I appreciated him for not doing that, for not going out of bounds. He said in his post-game presser that he thought he could make it to the end zone. So more power to him for thinking he saw what he saw and going for it. But then he fumbled the ball. He took a hit from behind a little bit from his left side and knocked the ball out of his hands and wasn't able to get on it. He didn't even know where the ball was. He was looking one direction, the ball was another. Doug Baldwin fumbled the ball. He was making moves. He caught a ball, made a great move to break a tackle, and before he was able to get to the end zone, he was hit from behind and fumbled the ball. It's just the things that we just typically don't do were all done on Sunday against the Rams. Tyler Lockett had a fair catch call that I didn't appreciate. The ball was coming down to him. And now I'm splitting hairs here now. I'm splitting hairs, but just all things that we haven't seen prior to Sunday. Fair catch call by Tyler Lockett. And I'm looking and he had 10 or 12 yards, to the nearest defender. Why'd you call fair catch? You have no opportunity to use the tool that Tyler Lockett is, his return skill. That weapon that we have, we don't get to use it if you don't, use it. He's calling for fair catch with 12 yards in between him and the next player. Russell Wilson in the pocket today. Now, already mentioning that the blocking was terrible. A side note to the blocking was Russell Wilson's pocket presence. Over the last 4 or 5 weeks, Russell Wilson in the pocket has been spot on. He's been spot on in the pocket. He's been making the right move regardless of whatever move that is, it's turned out to be the right move. Stepping up in the pocket, namely. On Sunday, Russell Wilson was doing less stepping up into the pocket and more of his Russell Wilson-like, spinneroonies that he does. And typically that works out. But Russell Wilson had multiple opportunities to just step forward into the pocket, but instead what he was doing was retreating. He pulls the ball down, and this isn't to discredit what Russell Wilson does, because he's obviously the best at doing it. But on Sunday, it was working against us. Russell took way more sacks than he actually had to because of how he was operating in the pocket when he wasn't throwing the ball. When he was choosing to pull the ball down, if he would have thought more of a step up in the pocket concept than retreat concept. He was retreating in the pocket and trying to run around and backwards and around instead of just stepping forward. And a lot of times he was running right into people. He got himself sacked 3, 4, 5 times on Sunday. Because instead of him stepping forward where he had nothing but daylight in front of him, and I'm not saying he should have stepped forward and ran the ball, but instead of stepping forward, he pulls the ball down, he looks, he steps forward once, then he turns around and try to loop around left or loop around right. And he's looping right into a St. Louis defender. That I didn't appreciate seeing on Sunday, and I saw it multiple times. One thing I saw that was really interesting. We talk about how Jimmy Graham was not a blocking tight end. Seahawks are crazy trying to get Jimmy Graham to block. He's not a blocking tight end. He's a receiver. Split him out wide, right? Well, I can tell you who is not a blocking tight end. Cooper Helfet is not a blocking tight end. The player's name escapes me right now, but on one particular play, and Russell Wilson got sacked. I'll try to maybe put it in the comments after the video, after I upload this cast. Cooper Helfet got pushed straight back into Russell Wilson, and then the player who was pushing him sacked him. I mean, it pushed him as if Cooper Helfet was just a 120 pound little guy. Defensive end just pushed him straight back, like as if he almost wasn't even there, and then tackled Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, looking down the field, probably saw the blue jersey out of his peripheral, so didn't alarm until it was too late. It was a real poor exhibition in pass blocking by Cooper Helfet. So we talk about how Jimmy Graham's not a blocking tight end. Cooper Helfet's not a blocking tight end. And he showed that there. There's one instance where, I believe Marcus Burley, after we had punted, the ball is rolling. It's on the ground. It's rolling toward the St. Louis goal line. It's rolling toward the goal line, and Marcus Burley picks up the punt. Now, it's true. He may have only got another 6 inches, or he might have got another 2.5 yards. So it could be, all for naught what I'm saying right now. But just when I say that it looked like the heads were not in the game, the players' heads were not in the game. The ball is on the ground, rolling in a positive direction on a punt play, and Burley picks the ball up rather than letting the ball roll. And based on what I saw, that ball still had some juice behind it, still had some momentum going. You could let that ball roll until it stopped. He was in perfect position to grab the ball, so all he had to do was remain where he was in relation to the ball, and just grab it before it went in the end zone. I don't even believe the ball was going to go in the end zone, but it definitely was going to go closer to the goal line. But no, he stops. He picks it up, and they ended up being down, I believe, somewhere right around the 5. They could have been right around the 2 or even closer. Now, 3 yards is 3 yards, but 3 yards is 3 yards. That makes a big difference. on the following punt, because they ended up punting that drive. I watched their punt coverage team let the ball roll till it died. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, that's how you cover a punt, Marcus Burley. Outside of all of the miscues that Seattle had on Sunday, really, a lot of it just comes down to the ball not bouncing our way. The ball just didn't bounce our way on Sunday. And that does seem like kind of a cop-out when you say, oh, the ball just didn't bounce our way. And I do think that it's kind of a cop-out, but sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes, the ball can only bounce one direction or another. And it didn't bounce Seattle's way. However, I think the ball bounces the direction of the team who puts forth the most effort. If you look at it in terms of statistics and percentages, the team that's playing the hardest usually has the ball bounce their way more often. Todd Gurley fumbled the ball twice on one drive. And we didn't recover the fumble. The first one, Earl Thomas had the ball dead to rights between him and, I want to say, Deshaun Shedd. It might have been McCray. But at least two Seahawks had the ball, and that might have been the problem. When you get too many guys around the football, no one can get it. The ball jumped out and was all surrounded by Seahawks. Somehow or another, the Rams ended up with it. Earl Thomas had the ball dead to rights. Later, Todd Gurley makes an amazing run, hurdles over Earl Thomas, as if Earl Thomas wasn't Earl Thomas, and then gets the ball knocked out, and the ball bounces forward again, and the Rams end up getting the ball again. Matter of fact, the center, both times, on both these plays, the center ended up being the one to recover the fumble. His job, apparently, with the offensive line of the St. Louis Rams is center/fumble recoverer, because that's what he does, apparently. There was 3 bad snaps in the game that I counted. I'm going round robin throughout the game. This is not a quarter by quarter thing like I normally do. This is just kind of a round robin. 3 bad snaps. We had a bad snap early in the game. The center just shot the ball straight up in the air. Right, Russell Wilson was in the shotgun. And the ball was just shot straight up into the air. And it actually ended up being like a direct snap play. Fred Jackson ended up snatching it out of the air. If you were a fool, you might think it was on purpose. But that was one. Later on, a field goal, and we actually made the field goal. But a field goal, the ball came out high. That's number 2. And then the one in the fourth quarter, where it's 3rd down and 1, another game-changing down, where we still have the game really in hand. The game is still, us coming back was in hand for so long, and we just kept taking ourselves out of it. The ball just scoots across the turf, right past Russell Wilson. Another shotgun play. Just Murphy's Law here, whatever could go wrong went wrong on Sunday. And it was the whole team. It wasn't one particular player. It was the whole team. Every single player on the field on Sunday for Seattle had a hand in that atrocious game. It wasn't just a couple of players. Richard Sherman got beat deep. That doesn't happen to Richard Sherman. By Kenny Britt, no less. Richard Sherman got beat deep by Kenny Britt. You know when you're having a bad day on defense when you get burned for 6 by Kenny Britt. And that isn't necessarily to take a shot at Kenny Britt than it is to just point out how overall poorly we played on Sunday. Because Richard Sherman has never been burned by Kenny Britt before. And we play the Rams twice a year. Every year. You know when you're having a bad day on defense when your number one corner, who happens to be named Richard Sherman, gets burned deep for 6 by Kenny Britt. Now, when it comes down to it, it does kind of end up being all for naught. You know, all the belly aching that I can do about the game. It ends up being all for naught. Because really, when it comes down to it, nothing really changed. But something did change. We lost our seeding position. We really needed to win to hold, so because we could have, well, I guess we wouldn't have, but we needed to win number 1 for a chance on locking in the 5 spot. For a chance at locking in the 5 spot. But more importantly, we needed to win to make sure that we don't lose the 5 spot. So what ended up happening is we lost. And then Minnesota made pretty light work of the New York Giants. So with that, we now have lost the 5 spot. So we're now sitting in the 6th seed. We've already clinched the playoff spot. So, I mean, that's, you know, there's something to be said for that. But we now are the 6th seed. As it stands right now, and I misspoke in my previous show, the short yardage show. The tiebreaker currently is held by Green Bay, between Green Bay and Minnesota. It's currently held by Green Bay. Green Bay actually won Minnesota's the first game against Minnesota. I was wrong about that. So although they are tied, they have the same record. Green Bay still holds the number 3 seed. And Green Bay and Minnesota play each other to close the season out on Sunday. So the winner of next week's game between Green Bay and Minnesota will take the North. So that's a pretty decent showdown there. Pretty huge game. The NFC North showdown, week 17 between those two teams. And that means a lot for Seattle. That means a lot for Seattle, because now the only way that we can get our 5 spot back, which is really what we want in terms of percentages, if you want to call it percentages, you know, and how deep we go in the playoffs. We want to get that 5 spot back so we can play Washington in the wild card round. So now, instead of, you know, and again, this is a little bit of hindsight. Minnesota won anyway, so I guess it doesn't change much. I was saying that we could hopefully win against St. Louis and then rest week 17 against Arizona, assuming that Minnesota found a way to lose to New York on Sunday, but that didn't happen. So in retrospect, it hasn't really changed much, but we didn't help ourselves out by losing to St. Louis. So now what we have to do is we have to beat Arizona. A loss on Sunday to Arizona, at Arizona, guarantees us a 6th spot. We have to win, otherwise we're going in at 6. So then it ends up being, okay, who do we play against? Is it going to be Green Bay? Or is it going to be Minnesota? If we go in at 6, we're going to play either Green Bay or Minnesota, depending on who wins that game. If we go in at 5, we play Washington for sure. So, I don't know about you guys, but I'd rather see us go in at 5 and play Washington. It's not that I don't think we can beat Minnesota or Green Bay. It's just that, I like our first round to not be a battle royale. I like our first battle royale to be in the second round of the playoffs, in the divisional round. Against the Carolina Panthers. I'd rather that. So, I guess when it really comes down to it, it doesn't really matter. We're going to the playoffs. That part is already set in stone. It just really would have been nice to seem like we're not stumbling in. But that's enough about that. Because again, we're still going to the playoffs. And all that being said, that is small fries compared to the story that I touched on my last short yardage. The Al Jazeera report about performance enhancing drugs in North American sports. With Peyton Manning as the cover, the cover story of the entire thing. Now, I watched the video. I watched the report. There's a 49-minute long report. You can see it on YouTube. It's called The Dark Side. And there is just too much interesting information in that report to ignore. There is simply too much information to sweep under the rug, to brush off as hogwash or hoopla or whatever word you want to call it. The information is simply too good. Now, before I get too deep into this, I will say that one thing about the report that I believe discredits the entire thing. And you have to really watch the video and really listen to it. You have to watch it and listen to it intently. You can tell that the editing of the video is done in a fashion so to make it seem like the things that are being said are suggesting something when they may not. The audio is obviously chopped. Okay, they if you listen to how the words are coming out, words are being, spoken words are put together in the video to appear that they were said in succession, like as in a sentence. Like if I were to say, "Do you want some peanut butter with your sandwich?" Sure, you can have that. That's a statement. Two sentences said in succession. But if I were to say, "Do you want peanut butter with your sandwich?" "I'm sorry, I don't have peanut butter. Would you like mayonnaise instead?" Sure, you can have that. But you cut out part of it. You can make it sound like I said, "Do you want a peanut butter with your sandwich?" Sure, you can have that. If you cut out the part about the mayonnaise and just put it together. And that's what's obviously done in the video. They are parts of the video where you can see the words coming out of the person's mouth and their mouth actually speaking those words. The words, the audio and the video actually in sync with one another. And there's portions of the video where the words are coming out, but you can't see the person's face saying it, or the person's face who supposedly is talking isn't even moving. Their mouth isn't even moving. You can tell that there are portions, there are sentence fragments that are brought together to make it sound like a sentence when it really isn't. And if you just if you watch and listen intently, you can tell, just based on, the way people speak, you can tell that people don't really speak that way. The speech patterns. Now, it's nothing new for media when doing reporting certain things. To get to the point of a story, sometimes when people talk, they say this, they say that, and in between this and that, there's a whole lot of stuff that doesn't really matter. So you cut that part out. But who is to say that the parts that are cutting out aren't aren't pieces of information that actually are in the complete and total opposition of what they're saying that they're saying, what Al Jazeera is saying that they're saying. So the obvious, cutting and pasting, if you will, of the audio in the video, to me, does at least leave room to discredit itself, for it to discredit itself. However, there is no denying the parts that don't fit that, that shoe. And no denying that the people who are speaking, the audio, the voices that are being heard are indeed from the people in the video. And there's way too much stuff said. There's just way too much stuff said. So the report starts out with them, interviewing a man named Tim Montgomery, who was a sprinter, Olympic sprinter. He ran, I believe, I don't know if it was 100 meter or 200 meters or something like that. He set a world record, in early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. He got caught for, using performance enhancing drugs. He was stripped of his medals, stripped of his, world record, stripped of everything. Now he's, lives in infamy. And of course he does the whole story about how it's bad to do drugs, not like just illegal drugs, but, like recreational drugs, the performance enhancing drugs. But he talks about, how he wishes it would have been different. Well, more than likely, if it had been done differently, he probably wouldn't have set the world record, or, kind of set the world record. I mean, he ran that fast, but, it was with an asterisk next to it. He says it's not worth it. He says he wants to just get out there and let people know that it's not worth it. This is more toward the end of the report. It's not worth it. Now I'm of the opinion that it was only not worth it because he got caught. Because when you start taking performance enhancing drugs, it of course is worth it. Because without them, you don't get where you want to be or where you need to be. These guys aren't just regular everyday Joes. These aren't guys that, go to work at the rock quarry 5 to 6 days a week for 10 to 12 hours a day, or even 8 to 10 hours a day, or go to work at the, your average day job. And then on the weekends, they train and become Olympic athletes or professional football players. No, that's not how it works. These guys are at the peak, the pinnacle of their professions. And even then, they require something to give them an extra boost. Take football. I mentioned previously the NFL. The NFL is full of players who are the best in the world at what they do. The best in the world. Players that play all through college. They play from kids to high school to college, and then they maybe make the pros. You know how many college players? How many colleges there are with football programs? There's only 53 men on an active NFL roster. I'll just keep it simple. On an active NFL roster, there's only 53 guys. There's only 32 teams in the NFL. So that means there's just a little bit under 1,700 people who are good enough to play in the NFL. Now, obviously, there's people out there who are better than others who never got a chance to play in the NFL or what have you. But if you just go ahead and just keep it simple, the guys who get to play, the guys who are good enough to play are the guys that play. Right? For whatever reason. The guys who are good enough to get there, get there. That's less than 1,700 people who are considered good enough in the whole world to play NFL football. Do you know how many people there are in the world? Yeah, how many people there are in the United States? Do you know how many people there are in the state of California or the state of Washington? Or in the city of San Diego or Los Angeles or Seattle? Only 1,700. 1,700 people are good enough to play in the NFL. 1,700, okay? I'm harping on this. CenturyLink Stadium sits 67,000. So you're talking about the tippy top of the best. These guys are going to want a competitive edge. And I guarantee you that no one who uses a performance enhancer to get to the top is going to regret it unless they get caught. Only the ones that get caught are the ones that go back and say, oh, it's not worth it. I regret it. No. The ones that use performance enhancing drugs and don't get caught never regret it. But I digress. So they start with Tim Montgomery in the video. And then they cut to a man named Liam Collins. Liam Collins is a former hurdler from the UK. This guy takes it from me. I went through this entire video hating Liam Collins. Liam Collins was a one-time, Olympic hopeful, I suppose. Had his time as a runner. Liam Collins actually ended up doing something in the UK having to do with investments in real estate or property management, something like that. And he cheated. So apparently Liam Collins is a cheater by nature anyway. Ended up getting caught, for fraud of one sort or another, and, ended up, his people that he was dealing with ended up losing millions of dollars collectively, and he is banned in his native country for doing anything regarding that job type. Got in a lot of trouble is the basis of the statement. I'm not sure who reaches out to who, but somehow or another, Al Jazeera and Liam Collins come together with the intention on exposing sports in general for the widespread usage of performance-enhancing drugs. So this elaborate plan is devised between Al Jazeera and Liam Collins. Liam Collins is going to make that one last effort to become an Olympic sprinter. He's going to go undercover, basically. This is going to an undercover sting operation into the dark side of sports. Posing as an Olympic hopeful, trying to take one more shot at making a podium somewhere. He's willing to throw caution to the wind and do whatever it takes. Anything to get to the top. And so starts the whole evolution. Liam Collins apparently is writing a book about Tim Montgomery. So they start with Tim Montgomery's sources. from the Bahamas, a doctor named Cyprian Strawn. Al Jazeera and Liam Collins go to the Bahamas. They talk to Cyprian Strawn. Cyprian Strawn tells him that he can get this, he can get that. You know, it's kind of small fry stuff. And you guys are going to have to watch the video. But it tells him he can get, you know, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. They move on. They get another name, Nicholas Fox, another doctor in the Bahamas. And Nick Fox tells them that not only can he get, you know, some other stuff, obviously things that are illegal in the realm of sports. He tells them, you know, he's asking these loaded questions, getting these guys to just divulge information. And he has hidden cameras on either his person or on his backpack or wherever he has multiple hidden cameras throughout this whole show, this whole video. None of these people know they're being recorded. That pisses me off. But anyway, the Golden Girls is a sprinter group from the Bahamas that won a gold medal, I believe, in 2000 or 2007 or something like that. And they're the pride of the country. He mentions that he had worked with a couple of the Golden Girls. After saying that he had worked with them in that same little segment, he then takes a little bit of a step back, says, I didn't really help them with anything illegal, just with typical treatments. So the Bahamas portion of the show comes to an end, and the Al Jazeera report then says that both Dr. Strawn and Dr. Fox both recanted anything that was said during those two meetings with Liam Collins. After the fact, they both said no, everything that I said isn't true. I can't get drugs, and I have never worked with the Golden Girls. They even actually contacted the members of the Golden Girls sprinting crew, and they said no, they never doped, and no, they had never met Dr. Fox. That's kind of fishy. So a time passes, and they're still, tossing the hook out, waiting for something to bite. They end up finding themselves in Vancouver, Canada, Vancouver, BC. A pharmacist named Chad Robertson. This Chad Robertson guy really gives up the booty here. Chad Robertson goes so far as to say he can get multiple different things that he's talking about. They talk about HGH and all kinds of names of drugs that I can't even pronounce. Chad Robertson's references his ability. Liam Collins asks about what about getting his stuff back across to the UK. Chad Robertson says, oh, well, either he has a broker on the other side of the pond, or he has connections with military contracts. So he's talking about he can get this stuff shipped wherever it has to go using the military. He also references destroying evidence in case the you-know-what hits the fan. After Mr. Robertson, after his little 15 seconds of fame in the report, they get directed to a man named Brandon Splitzer, something like that. Mr. Splitzer, who's talking more about drugs that they can help him get, talks about falsifying information when it comes time for I believe the group is called WADA, which is a group that whose job is to check and make sure, they have a heavy hand in making sure that there's no drugs being used in I believe Olympic sporting. Said if WADA comes looking, we can tamper with evidence. We can destroy evidence. We can falsify the records. I can have the real record say one thing, and then we'll have our own, separate records that will actually say what we're really doing. And if push comes to shove, I can just delete that file. No one's any of the wiser. This is what Brandon Spleitzer says. Robertson and Spleitzer tell Liam Collins, but if you really want some help, you need to see the man who has taken smart drugs to the next level. The man at all this. Well, of course they want that. Enter Dr. Charlie Sly. Charlie Sly's last name, I guess, is quite fitting, given the situation. Charlie Sly is the one who actually names Peyton Manning in all this. Throughout the video, you hear about different players being involved and, different players these pharmacists and doctors work with. Taylor Teagarden is a baseball player. Not sure what position he plays, but he's a journeyman baseball player. He's played for a few different teams throughout his career so far. Taylor Teagarden is actually in the video. He's actually in the video, Taylor Teagarden. It's unreal. He's actually in, I'm wondering, okay, what's going to happen to Taylor Teagarden? Who I think he might play for the Cubs right now, I believe, or whoever he plays for. How do you get a job again when you're actually in a video? Your face. They're on there talking with the bad guys. He's got to be done, right? Everybody is making such a big deal about the whole Peyton Manning thing and whether or not Peyton did or didn't. And I think we're losing sight about the big picture here. Whether or not Peyton did or didn't is really besides the point. Yeah, he's the American, American hero as far as football is concerned. Peyton Manning, the best man ever. He's the best man ever. So everyone's making a big deal about Peyton Manning, but there was 11 different players in this video that were named. Okay, that were mentioned by name. 11 different athletes, not including Tim Montgomery, who was part of the video, who actually they interviewed. But 11 different athletes named. Very few of them responded. Most of them still playing in their respective sports. Charlie Sly gives up so many names. In a conversation with Liam while they're in a vehicle, Charlie Sly appears to, or says that he gets a text message from Clay Matthews, Green Bay Packers. Let me just read off the list of players, because I'll get to the Peyton Manning thing in a moment. Let me just read off the list of players that are mentioned in the report. Dustin Keller. They do a pretty in-depth, portion of the videos on Dustin Keller. Most recently playing for the Dolphins. He's out with injury right now. Dustin Keller, they talk about him all the way through college, working with these folks. Mike Tyson, no reply. Dustin Keller also, no reply. They reached out to all these people and not many of them replied. Peyton Manning, obviously. Peyton Manning's reply was very angry. Peyton Manning's reply was so emotional, it kind of makes you wonder. Mike Neal, Packers, no reply. Mike Neal, they mentioned in there that with the work they did with Mike Neal started out as a defensive lineman. And over the course of his process, he was moved from defensive lineman to linebacker and was able to up his salary from, I think it was a $400,000 or $500,000 a year, to ended up getting a $2 million a year contract. Not huge money, but they're taking credit, literally taking credit for his advancement in the league. Mentioned Clay Matthews, Taylor Teagarden, Ryan Howard from the Phillies, Ryan Zimmerman, James Harrison, Pittsburgh Steelers. Ryan Howard, Ryan Zimmerman, James Harrison all denied that they had any involvement with performance-enhancing drugs or with these people. Julius Peppers and Clay Matthews. So we got, let me roll that list again. Dustin Keller, Mike Tyson, Peyton Manning, Mike Neal, Clay Matthews, Taylor Teagarden, Ryan Howard, Ryan Zimmerman, James Harrison, Julius Peppers, Clay Matthews. That's a lot of people. Charles Sly, I mean, who really is the meat of the whole story when it comes to who gave up the most information. Not to mention that in the show, when it comes down to the stuff actually being delivered. So before they go to Charlie Sly, between Chad Robertson and Brandon Speltzer, they actually have a segment where the drugs that he wants are actually being delivered to him. Chad Robertson is the one who devises the entire plan of how they're going to administer the drugs, what the format's going to be, basically how he's going to take them, when he's going to take them, all that good stuff. Brandon Speltzer, he's the one who delivers the drugs to him. Chad Robertson is not quoted, but recorded saying that Brandon Speltzer will be the fall guy if the you-know-what hits the fan. And they're supposed to be partners. So not only is this thing so deep and dark, it's also cutthroat, which I guess is to be expected. Robertson literally looks Liam Collins in the face and says, I don't want you dealing with, the person we're going to get the stuff. Let Brandon do that. Because he'll be the fall guy if you know what hits the fan, if you know what I mean. That's what he says in the report, in the video. Crazy. Charlie Sly mentions in their car conversation that via Mike Neal, he had involvement where he says seemed like half the team, the Green Bay Packers. He said, yeah, Mike Neal was bringing half the team to see him, talk to him. He specifically says he had about 25 guys from the Green Bay Packers at least having conversations with them. He didn't go into detail, but he said he had at least 25 Green Bay Packers he had conversations with. He goes on to say that he's worked specifically with 12 Green Bay Packers. There's only 53 guys on an active roster, as I said a few minutes ago. This guy says that he has spoken with 25. That's just a bit under half. And that he's worked with 12. That's just a bit under half of that. Now, to segue into the whole Peyton Manning portion of this. Charlie Sly says that he was there during 2000, at the Geyer Institute. The Geyer Institute is a place head up by this Dr. Geyer. They didn't go too deep about Dr. Geyer. But, they said that the Geyer's Institute, Charlie Sly is heard saying that he's surprised that the Geyer shop is not shut down. How Geyer's place is how's it still running because of all the, craziness going on in there. He says he had dealings with Peyton Manning in 2011 after Peyton's neck surgery. Now, since this report, it's been said that he wasn't even part of the Geyer Institute in any way whatsoever until 2013. It's still kind of fishy. It's kind of fishy. He specifically says that they sent HGH to Manning addresses, whether it was their home or somewhere else. He mentions Florida. I'm not sure where the Mannings live, all the time. But he mentions that HGH was sent to multiple different places, multiple different times, all addressed to, I think her name's Ashley Manning. Peyton Manning's wife, whatever her name. I think her name's Ashley. Now, Peyton Manning has already been interviewed about this. But before then, well, no, let me say that. Peyton Manning has already been interviewed, and Peyton Manning's response, it was Lisa Salters who interviewed Peyton Manning, and I suppose other folks have already talked to him as well, but you can tell his agitation in his responses. It's rightfully so. I mean, Peyton Manning, he's a hard worker. Peyton Manning's going to go down in the books as one of the best quarterbacks ever to play in the NFL. He's got records that may never be broken. So he's obviously agitated by these accusations. But sometimes one might say that showing that much agitation over something is a red flag. I'm not asserting one way or the other. I'm just saying. Let's look at it, though. Peyton Manning, already a great quarterback in this league, has already tasted success, right? Suffers an injury that for most people probably would be career ending, right? For most people, that injury, I mean, for all intents and purposes, he had a broken neck. Some folks don't even walk after a broken neck. Some folks don't even live normal lives after a broken neck. Peyton Manning wants to get back on the field and play football in the NFL, mind you, after a broken neck. Peyton Manning has 3 or 4 surgeries to fix a broken neck. So, Mr. Manning, you want to get back on the field and solidify your legacy in this league. Win one more Super Bowl. Go set some more records. Yada, yada, yada. And he has the opportunity to take a little HGH. Which personally I don't think should be a big deal. But it is. And it's presented to him like, hey, and I'm totally going hypothetical here. Totally hypothetical. Mr. Manning, go ahead and take this HGH. Get yourself back on track. And, you know, the only downfall is, hey, if you get caught, it's going to look really bad on you. But your out is, we'll go ahead and make sure it's always in the name of your wife. Because no one's going to be able to ask, why does your wife need HGH? I mean, they can ask, but that's none of your you-know-what business, right? None of your business why my wife needs this medical thing for her medical thing. None of your damn business. There's your out. So regardless of what people believe, it's like Denzel says in Training Day, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So is it really that far-fetched to think that Peyton Manning took HGH? There's so many things to consider here. Al Jazeera went deep. They went real deep in this. They went real deep. It doesn't seem like it's very just smart from the business sense to go this deep if there's nothing legit. You're going to try and tell me, I mean, Peyton Manning didn't take HGH. Okay, well, why did your wife get sent HGH from these folks who are known to work with all these players? Now, they're not going to ask that question. They'll ask the question, but again, that question won't be answered because it's nobody's business. That question is not going to get answered. It's going to get asked, but it's not going to get answered. And it shouldn't. The NFL doesn't have a right to ask Ashley Manning about her medical goings on. It's none of their business. But you gotta consider, why else? Does Ashley Manning have some sort of medical disability or medical issue that requires HGH? I imagine that if she did, somebody would have heard about it by now. It's Peyton Manning's wife. But maybe not. And Peyton Manning does not deny that the HGH was sent to him, or not sent to him, but sent to his estate, wherever it was. Peyton Manning's responses do conveniently kind of dodge the real questions. Did you take this? No, I didn't. Okay, sure. Of course he didn't, right? But if there was nothing to hide, why not just say why HGH was sent to your wife? Maybe he will in the future. I guess they're gonna have to have some time to figure out what they're gonna say if they're not being truthful. But if it's true, if he's telling the truth, then he already knows the answer of why his wife is having HGH sent to her. If there's no lie, then he already knows the answer. He could have said something already. But again, let's forget about Peyton Manning. Again, everybody's getting caught up on Peyton Manning. How about the other 11 or 10 players named in the report? These guys are just giving up information like it's nothing. Personally, I'm of the opinion that, first of all, nobody in their right mind anyway is not wise to the fact that these players are taking drugs. They need that competitive edge. I already told you why. I'd go so far to say that the players that aren't taking the drugs are the ones who aren't the top in their field. They say in the report if you know how, if you know the testing process, it's easy to beat. Honestly, I think I'm more upset about the fact that the way Al Jazeera went about doing it. They literally set up a sting operation, a spy, an insurgent with this Liam Collins guy who was going in, posing as a player, posing as an athlete, looking for the stuff. Recorded these people, voice and video, without their knowledge, and took it all and ran right to the press. That's the part that bothers me the most. Now you got Charlie Sly, who's recanting everything he says now. He's saying that, no, I didn't say all these things. I didn't drop all these names in a serious fashion. The reason I said him was because I was trying to smoke Liam Collins out. I was trying to test his knowledge. Now, someone please explain to me what slandering the names of multiple sports stars has to do with testing someone's knowledge. If I come to you looking for drugs and you tell me everybody you've ever sold drugs to while you're selling me the drugs, how does that test my knowledge about the drugs? Simple. It doesn't. Charlie Sly is making an attempt to correct his screw up, and it's a poor one at that. Charlie Sly is trying to, number one, he's trying to fix two things. He's, number one, trying to fix the mess that he made, that all these players that he mentioned to Liam Collins now are going to have their own trials in one fashion or another. The poor Green Bay Packers. He said he spoke with 25 Green Bay Packers. Makes you wonder if maybe the Green Bay Packers players maybe got some heads up on this, and maybe there's some reason why the Green Bay Packers have tanked in the second half of this season. 25 Green Bay Packers. So he's fixing that mess. Number two, he's literally bringing down the business. Well, I guess Al Jazeera is bringing down the business. I mean, let's for one moment just forget about the sports stars. Let's forget about the athletes. All these practitioners, these doctors, these pharmacists. You got to think that they're all going down, right? I imagine in the NFL and in Major League Baseball, maybe baseball a little bit different, but in the NFL, if you don't fail a drug test, I don't think they can go back and get you for steroid usage, right? I think you can only get in trouble for using performance enhancing drugs if you get busted using performance enhancing drugs, which is via test. Failed test. So if they say that so and so used performance enhancing drugs 3 seasons ago, I don't believe you get in trouble 3 seasons later. I don't know that to be a fact. I just think that's the case. So I'm not so much worried about I am worried about the players, but not so much the players as I am about these medical practitioners. These guys they have to all lose their jobs, right? They all have to lose their license to practice and everything else. Not to mention jail time. These guys have got to be going to jail because all of these players are getting these drugs that they're not prescribed for, that they don't have any medical use for, except for to enhance their playing on the field. I mean, literally, you hear these guys between Cyprian and Fox from the Bahamas, Robertson and Spitzer from Vancouver, and Sly from Texas. literally saying how we can use to get these drugs for you, talking about how to falsify information, talking about how we're going to say you have this when you really don't, just in case you get asked why you have this drug by whoever. I mean, it's an obvious step over the line of I guess it's your oath as a doctor or as a medical practitioner. And that is punishable by law, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure you can go to jail for all the things that are in this video that these medical practitioners have done. And there's no denying it because they're in the video, saying it, doing it. And then Charlie Sly trying to say that he was just saying what he said, just to smoke the guy out. That's the worst excuse I've ever heard for anything. But I tell you what, even after all of this, I'm more upset at Al Jazeera than anything. Because players using performance-enhancing drugs has never been a secret for me. We know what happens. We know what happens. Like I said, they say in the video, as long as you know the testing process, you typically will not get caught. That just means that the ones who do get caught are doing it so sloppily or so haphazardly, or their practitioners are doing it so sloppily or so haphazardly that they end up getting caught. So the NFL's golden boy, Peyton Manning, is really at the forefront of this. And I don't think it's not rightfully so. I mean, every one of those players should be right there with him, but it's because it's Peyton Manning that's getting so much, coverage. What about Julius Peppers? What about Clay Matthews? Or the other 23 Green Bay Packers that Charles Sly says he's worked with. The NFL is having 2 bad years in a row. Last year, it was Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson. And Greg Hardy. This year, it's the concussion movie, which isn't anything that happened, traumatic this season, but the fact that the movie's coming out is not going to be good for the NFL. The concussion movie and now this Al Jazeera report. 2 bad years in a row. Two years of bad press in a row for the NFL. It's going to be real interesting to see how this shakes out. I'm of the opinion that the NFL is going to try to not find out the whole truth rather than find out the whole truth. If it was anybody other than Peyton Manning at the forefront of this, I believe you nail him to the wall. You nail him to the wall. But I have a hard time thinking you nail Peyton Manning to the wall. The NFL is not going to shoot themselves in the foot. Roger Goodell is not going to shoot himself in the foot. This is big. This is big. That's enough of that rant. Seahawks got the Cardinals next Sunday. We'll see how we attack this game. I'll be on with short yardage throughout the week. With the goings on from the press conferences and roster moves and things like that. See what we're gonna bring to the table. at Arizona, week 17. That's going to be it for tonight. This is Rob English of Socal Seahawk. Thanks for tuning in. Go Hawks.